Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today we're going to talk about Bitcoin and the continued move that we've had. Yesterday we were below 29K. We did a video earlier today where we broke 31K. We've now exceeded 33K and are currently back down to just under 32K. So we're in pretty crazy times. The price appreciation has been pretty remarkable, to say the least. To see a $33,000 Bitcoin on January 2nd. With that said, things are getting, as you know, things are getting really heated. Now, depending on who you ask, we're not in a bubble or we are in a bubble. So I ran a survey, asking, are we in a bubble? Are we not in a bubble? And it was about 50-50 split. And obviously, the reason for that is probably somewhat because of the ambiguity of the question in and of itself. Does it refer to a short-term bubble? Does it refer to a macro bubble? I'm sure a lot of people would agree that in the short term, we are overextended, right? We are very much overextended. With that said, we've been overextended for a long time. And this is why we've said, when it comes to, say, weekly time frames, so let's go look at weekly time frames. If you look at indicators like, say, the RSI, they can be useful, right? They can be useful because they generally give you an idea of how the market's feeling, right? If things are overbought, if they're oversold. And you can see again how we are further extended now than we were at any point during the last cycle. So there will come a correction, but we could stay at this level for weeks, and we've been saying that for a while. And if you were to say draw the cutoff down here, you could already say that we've been overbought for weeks. I mean, above 70, the RSI has been above 70 since October, since mid-October, and generally people would consider anything above 70 to be overbought. So, in fact, Bitcoin is significantly overextended. If we look at, say, our regression rainbow, we have officially hit the same level that we hit in 2019 based on these regression lines, right? So if we just draw our accumulation band, our accumulation window for this market cycle, and then also do the same thing for this one, there are some similarities. However, this recent market cycle has had a little bit more short-term volatility in the idea that it hasn't been as clear-cut where the accumulation range is. Obviously, this is primarily the accumulation range, but we've had some periods of accelerated growth followed by a nasty short-term bear market again. Now we are essentially as overextended as we were in 2019. So we've been talking about this for a while, the idea that it seems very plausible that we could at least become as extended as we were in 2019. And in fact, we have now reached that level. If you were to go take if you look at, say, the regression band, and you look at overvaluation from the fair value, as we've mentioned before, we are now about 195% overvalued, just like we were in 2019, right? Just like we were in 2019. So again, that's not to say that the price cannot go up from here. It very easily could. Obviously, things like 35K, 40K are always on the cards during times like this. And honestly, it gets to the point where, betting against Bitcoin can be quite dangerous. And that's why we often don't talk about, betting against Bitcoin in terms of, shorts and whatnot. Because momentum is a hell of a thing in markets in general, and especially with things like Bitcoin. There will come a day where there will be a correction, and we'll all look at it and say, oh, well, it makes sense because we had been overextended for a long period of time. But guessing when that correction will be is very, very difficult. It's incredibly difficult, and just in the same manner that we could have said it would have happened 3 weeks ago, we could say it's going to happen today, or it could happen in 3 weeks. We just simply do not know. And so, if you look at, say, the last market cycle, one of the interesting things is, we had pretty significant moves, and the funny thing is they ultimately had 40% corrections, right? We had like these 37% corrections, but some of the times when we had these corrections, while it was a 37% correction, if people were not buying here because they were waiting for a correction and it never came, they were waiting for it to dip back down and never came, and then suppose that after not buying there, let's zoom back in, suppose that after not buying here, when we were in the fair value rate range, which is generally when I just systematically DCA into the market, imagine they waited and didn't buy here, they didn't buy here, and then eventually it comes up and it finally does see a 40% correction, but the 40% correction takes us to a valuation that was much higher than where they could originally bought in. And so if they think, okay, it's coming back down, and then they say, all right, it's come this far, it's probably going to keep going, but what if it never does get back to those levels, at least in terms of the regression? What if it never gets back to those levels in the short term? You can see that from when we left the regression band here, it took us, in fact, 87 weeks, 609 days total, 87 weeks to get back to it. And the price had appreciated from $1,000 to $3,000. So a pretty big difference between that period. Now, I've said all along, that if I set it at 15K, at 20K, at 25K, if I didn't own Bitcoin, so I'm not accumulating Bitcoin, of course, because I think this is way far overextended. And again, as I said, it doesn't mean the price can't go up. It's just not it's not worth the risk, in my opinion. But again, as I've said all along, if you don't have Bitcoin, it doesn't mean you shouldn't buy some. As we've said, I do anticipate Bitcoin ultimately trending to over six figures. I don't tend to think that will happen this year, but I would love to be proven wrong. So if you do have a long-term mindset, then I think it's still theoretically okay. But, FOMOing into the market here and throwing a ton of money in that you really can't afford to do so might not be the wisest decision. This is not financial advice. This is just, I've lived through these markets many times, and it's all fun and games when things are going up, and things have a way of going up much longer than people can usually anticipate before a correction. Things are all fun and games while it's going up, and market sentiment can change on a dime, and then it can be the bad news bears for a while. So right now, things are still incredibly bullish, right? I mean, the weekly chart looks amazing. I mean, if you look at, say, the 12-day chart, which is another chart I've seen some people use, we've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This is our 9th 12-day candle in a row where we're nothing but green, right? Nothing but green. And this one, this candle should end. It'll end in about 10 days. So we'll see. We'll see where things go. We know that historically speaking, Q1 has not been that great for Bitcoin since 2013. Maybe this will be the first year in 8 years where we actually do have a generally good Q1. In 2 of those years, remember, we had an 8% move, but we're pretty much just saying that's an okay move, not really that impressive. In order for us to have a decent Q1 move, we need to, at the very least, outperform our closing price, which was right around $29,000 or just shy of $29,000, depending on what exchange you use. So, with all this in mind, let's just be a little bit pragmatic about things. And, one of the things I see is that everyone's saying, well, this time is different because of institutional money. Again, I'm not going to say that institutional money has not had an effect on this rapid price depreciation. In fact, I'm sure that it has. I'm sure that it has contributed a ton to this recent price move. With that said, I've always contended that institutional money is something we need to get to ultimately a six-figure Bitcoin. One of the things that tends to cause me to be on the alert is when I put out polls like Bitcoin will be considered blank in 2021, and out of 10,000 people who voted, 7,800 people said bullish, and only 7% said bearish. Now, maybe you are of the mentality that, well, if everyone thinks it's going to be bullish, then that means it's going to be bullish, right? Well, if you had put out the same poll, at the end of 2017, it probably would have yielded the same results. So, while I'm not saying that 2021 won't be bullish, I do think there will certainly be periods during 2021 where a lot of people will get absolutely wrecked in their positions because of being irresponsible. So remember to be responsible in this market. I've seen people make a lot of money, and I've seen people lose a lot of money. I have a systematic strategy to take profits. That way, no matter whenever a bubble forms, I'm making money, right? It's systematically making money. I sort of treat it like a secondary income, a secondary revenue stream. That's more or less how I think of it, not something that I buy and then hold forever. That's just not my style, I guess. And of course, one of the most common arguments is, well, if you just buy and hold, does that work out better? And with Bitcoin, buying and holding does tend to work out. However, if you were buying and holding in 2017, surely most people would have preferred to have taken profits rather than watching it drop from, say, 19.5K back down to $3,100. So, of course, hindsight's always 20/20. I do think we have a long way to go this market cycle, but at this rate, if Bitcoin continues moving up this quickly, it certainly is not normal, right? It's certainly not normal for it to go up this quickly. And this is a logarithmic scale, which is what we generally should use because it helps us identify percent difference moves and helps us to make easy comparisons to prior cycles. But we've also looked at, say, textbook bubbles. So if we just look at textbook bubble, which is as a linear scale, this looks pretty parabolic to me, right? It looks pretty parabolic to me. You might even say that the March sell-off was that first sell-off in a textbook bubble. And, we got institutional investors coming in here. Obviously, there's institutional investors coming in higher as well. And then you get the public media attention phase. And at some point, a blow-off top. Again, wherever that blow-off top comes, precisely is anyone's guess. And for those who say that, Bitcoin's not on the news, it's on the front page of BBC today. It was on the front page of Bloomberg today. So you can't say that it's not on the news because it's actually a lot of different places on the news. So it's definitely getting media attention. Of course, with this type of attention, we stand to be able to go higher potentially. But at the same time, this can be one of those things, right, where you look back on it in a few months, and if it does come back down, right, if let's say it continues on for a bit longer, and then if it does come back down, people will look back at it and say, oh yeah, well it was definitely overbought there. We needed a correction. On the other hand, if it continues to move up and up and up, then it just means that there's more fuel to the fire before we ultimately do have a significant correction. So, as I've said before, I come from it from a biased perspective. I was accumulating Bitcoin for years within the regression band, and I've said all along that if you're late to the party, there's nothing necessarily wrong with buying Bitcoin as we continue to move up. You just need to recognize the risk associated with it. Okay. For us to get to the bottom of the upper regression band, it would correspond to a valuation of 50. It would correspond to a valuation of 54,884, so almost 55,000. And then the upper part of it corresponds to around 80,000, and that would be again if we went there instantaneously. Hopefully this video has been useful. I just want to put out a general word of caution. I still do own the majority position of my Bitcoin. I have taken profits. But I still do own the majority position of it. If we continue to push higher, then I will continue to take more and more profits. But as I did say, I still own the majority of it. If you guys like the content, please subscribe to the channel. Give the video a thumbs up. Also check out the Telegram channel in the description below. And remember, there is the premium list sale. It will end tomorrow. So tomorrow is the last day. If you guys want a community to be a part of this market cycle, make sure you check it out. You get access to exclusive content, weekly reports, weekly videos. We just did our first our first premium live stream. Also, you get access to these indicators on TradingView, to the risk dashboard, to the Telegram alerts channel, to the private chat room. We have a lot more things coming in 2021. Pretty excited about it. Make sure you guys check it out. There's a link to the sale in the description below. That'll wrap it up. Let's get to 80,000 subscribers. So subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time. Bye.